Hello and welcome to Tablet's Israel Update. It's the 2nd of May and it's been 1 year, 6 months and 25 days since Iron Swords War began. It's been quite a while since we were here. I wonder if Mike is indeed at his desk at the headquarters. You are. Surprise.
I'm here.
Yeah. So why weren't you here for all this time?
Oh, now you see, I have to explain to everybody what that little smart alecky comment you just made is all about.
Please do. Please.
You and I were arguing with each other before this started about who's responsible for our long absence. Yeah. And one of us was refusing to take responsibility. And Gatty, I'm not going to name him. I'm not going to name him because I'm not petty, okay?
Yeah, but
I just want to get on.
I'm not asking you to name him. I'm just asking you to promise you won't do it again.
I promise that I will not withhold his name again.
Okay. Thank you very much. And now there is a great deal on our plate. The good news before that, Mike, is there was an international policy summit hosted by JNS, a very large affair with a lot of important speeches and very interesting content, and
including one by you.
One by me, yeah.
Was that the most important one?
Some say so, but I'm not going to say who. But the good news, Mike, is that many people approached me and asked, where the F are you guys? I can't make sense of the news without you. So somehow their prayers reached you, and here we are again. So why don't you start with the headlines? Because I have a lot to say after you're done.
Oh, yeah. I unlike other days.
Unlike other days.
All right. I'll run through the headlines quickly, Gotti. So we've got deadly clashes this week in Syria between. It's actually, from my perspective, it's not exactly it's not exactly clear, but there are attacks that are targeting the Druze. The Israeli government has again reiterated that it will defend the Druze, and it has carried out an attack. The Israeli Air Force has carried out an attack near Damascus in order to drive home its point. We'll talk more about this later, I think. There's a fourth round of Iran-U.S. talks about Tehran's nuclear program has been postponed, Gotti. Both the reasons given for the postponement were logistical and technical, but I wonder what's behind that. I don't actually believe logistical and technical. I don't know what that means. Ronen Bar, Gotti, your favorite Israeli official, has resigned. He will be leaving his office soon. He, of course, is the subject of a heated controversy because the cabinet voted to dismiss him. After they did so, there's a legal battle in the High Court. The High Court worked to stop the dismissal. That led to a war of affidavits. Ronen Bar and Prime Minister Netanyahu both filed competing affidavits to the High Court. Bar claimed that Netanyahu had pressured him into acting unlawfully due to personal and political considerations, and of course Netanyahu disagreed with that and filed an alternative affidavit. And I'm going to ask you to explain that in greater detail. There's lots of other things going on. Attacks on Houthis. Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor, is now going to be. He's been demoted to be the UN ambassador, and Marco Rubio is taking his place temporarily. Rubio, like Henry Kissinger, will be both Secretary of State and National Security Advisor. Over to you. Let's talk about what's going on in Israel.
Yeah, just a quick question at the foot of your last remark. Is Rubio going to stay as National Security Advisor, in your opinion?
No, I think they are depicting this as temporary, and it's such an unusual move. Like I said, it did exist under Nixon with Kissinger, but Kissinger was an extraordinary fellow. I suspect that at some point Rubio will go back to State Department and somebody else will be National Security Advisor.
The National Security Advisor sits in the White House, right? And
sits in the White House, right in the West Wing, right next to the president.
Yeah, the Secretary of State is supposed to be at State.
At State Department, which is a 5 minute, 7 minute, 10 minute walk away. The National Security Advisor is not confirmed by the Senate. The president can put anyone in that position that he wants, and it is a extremely grueling job because you are a staffer in every sense of the word of the president, and you are at his side on foreign policy all day long, and you have meetings from 7 in the morning till 9 at night. But you have enormous influence because you are coordinating everyone for all of the State Department, Defense Department, CIA, and et cetera, for the president on national security.
I don't remember Henry Kissinger complaining about the load of work.
No, he had an enormous capacity for work.
Let's start with Israel then, and the rogue Shin Bet chief Ronen Bar. First of all, I contest your news bulletin where you said he resigned. He refused to leave his chair and announced he would only resign on the 15th of June. It's a very strange thing for a head of Shin Bet to defy the government to which he is supposed to be accountable and stay in his office and then announce where he would do us the great favor and leave it. Mind you, that while this is going on, there is an investigation into the staff of the prime minister, which smells a lot like the Russian hoax. And he is also trying to undermine the police chief, the police in general, and of course, the minister in charge of the police, Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Minister of National Security. He is conducting an investigation on the penetration of Kahanism, the extreme radical racist view of Rabbi Meir Kahana, the assassinated Rabbi Meir Kahana, of which Ben-Gvir was a disciple in his youth. And the investigation has been conducted, although there was no pretext for it whatever in evidence. And imagine what it would be if it was opposite.
They didn't even come up with a Steele dossier.
Nothing. and imagine how it would be if there was a left-wing government and some right-wing Shin Bet chief would have investigated the penetration of Kaplanism, the anti-Bibism, into the police. It is a threat, and it went so far that the Shin Bet arrested a very important chief of police, the chief of police of Judea and Samaria, and then the chief of police of Judea and Samaria started recording the Shin Bet, and we have a lot on that too. So I'll say 2 sentences about this crazy stuff, and then go to the war of affidavit.
Let me ask you one question first about.
Just to say, Mike, to give it a headline, because I think we are now at a Hunter Biden laptop minute in Israel. Yeah.
Okay. We'll come back to that in 1 second. Just let me understand something. Yes, my presentation of the news was deficient. I agree, and it is odd that Ronen Bar announced that he's going to leave on June 15. What do you think is behind that? So he's stepping down, but not right away. Why is he? What's the purpose of the delay? What does he want to do between now and June 15?
Undermine the government. My interpretation of Ronen Bar is that he is very consistent. The reason that the soldiers were asleep in their beds when the atrocities began on October 7th is that Ronen Bar thought that Hamas was preparing itself for an Israeli invasion and therefore might act nervously to any raising of the alert. You remember, I think we talked about it here in detail. So Ronen Bar thinks that the dangerous element is Netanyahu. Remember, this is a guy of the Kaplan milieu. And we heard from the Kaplan milieu a million times. Hamas is not the big problem. The big problem is Netanyahu. The enemy is Netanyahu, some of them say. Even some analyst on Channel 12, a regular analyst on Channel 12, his area of coverage is jurisprudence, said Netanyahu is the enemy. And this is their frame of mind. So remember, why didn't he wake Netanyahu up? He was afraid of a miscalculation. You don't know how many memes, Mike, there are on the Israeli internet now with the head of Ronen Bar juxtaposed on a pageant queen with a stripe across her chest saying miscalculation. Because the miscalculation allegedly is that everybody would be dragged into an escalation that nobody wanted because Israel would overreact to some Hamas intelligence. So this is why he did not wake up.
So in other words, he was afraid of feeding the right-wing beast with intelligence assessments that said there was a serious threat. So
Exactly.
he downplayed the threat. The threat analysis, maybe even unconsciously did it, not because he never believed that there would actually be such a serious attack. He didn't want to give the right wing anything that they could use.
Yeah, he was afraid that war would begin because of the Israelis. So he not only did he not wake up the theater, he hushed it and made sure there was not even a whisper. And certainly he did not wake up the prime minister, the hawkish, crazy prime minister who would overreact because of a miscalculation. And this was the Shin Bet analysis of what happened in previous rounds. They kept saying that the problem was that Israel overreacted. So this was his frame of mind on October 7. As I said here on television, Ronen Bar has situated himself as Shin Bet chief with his back to Gaza and his face to Judea and Samaria. That's where the danger would come from. And indeed, this Shin Bet who keeps underestimating the malevolence of Hamas keeps exaggerating the threat by rogue settlers. And so they keep arresting Jewish settlers, Mike, for months on end in preventive detention without a shred of evidence. And now they arrested Avishai Mualem because Avishai Mualem started refusing to arrest these people. He's the chief of police in Judea and Samaria. And so they arrested Avishai Mualem, the chief of police of Judea and Samaria. And what came out to the press, and the press, the press is totally sold out to the left. The press said that Avishai Mualem was bribing the Minister of National Security by carrying out his orders. You heard right. He was attempting to climb up the ladder of police jobs
by doing what he was told.
The minister said, which is a dangerous thing because the minister is a carnist. And so Ronen Bar has been acting really wildly towards even the police. So what happened is Avishai Mualem began to record them. And then recordings were leaked that would make your hair stand if you have any. They actually, you can hear the guy, the head of the Jewish division of Shabak. They're so soft with the Palestinians. They're so tough with the Jews. So the head of the Jewish division said, "Arrest them. I don't care if there is any evidence. Put them in some hole with rats." And Avishai Mualem said, "Bro. We don't have anything against him." And he says, "I don't care. Make it look like a proper investigation. Taseh mar'it ain, a facade of a proper investigation." So this has been going on one side. And now let me play the other turntable on my political analysis DJ stand. The other side is the affidavits. Ronen Bar is refusing to leave his post. And he's saying, "I will submit the case to the Supreme Court." So in effect, the people are treating the Supreme Court as the government. Because although the law clearly says that the Shin Bet is subordinate to the cabinet, that the cabinet can dismiss the head of Shin Bet even without any demand for an explanation. It's enough that he doesn't get along with the prime minister. And this was a unanimous decision by the cabinet. And the Supreme Court, as our Supreme Court does, accepted this for debate. And it's been debating it. So Ronen Bar submitted an affidavit. And that affidavit, Mike, I'll try to be as moderate as I can. is a bunch of lies that are so obvious that you think not only was our security, we put in charge of our security a man who is not just irresponsible, ideological, arrogant, and whatnot. This affidavit sounds like an unintelligent move, because these are things that you can find out. So what does he do in his affidavit? First of all, he said,
we of course we treated some of this back when the Shin Bet came up with their report on October 7th, and that was transparently
transparent lies.
Lies. Transparently a political document.
Now the new document also contradicts some of the former lies that we had in the report. And now he says,
they're not even keeping their story straight.
No, not at all. And so now he says it's the idea that I did not provide a warning on that night is an attempt to delegitimize me and an attack on me by the prime minister. I did provide a warning, and he goes through the night, and he said there was an assessment at 3:13, and at 5:15, I think the phrase he uses is, I woke up the whole system, or I alerted the whole system. And look, a warning in a security professional parlance is not I talked with someone on the telephone and said I was concerned. That's not a warning. A warning is a procedure. It is a command. There is a formal command called warning, which has different aspects to it. Where is it? Who is it? What signs do we have, etc. And there was obviously no such thing. And to say that you alerted the system, you did not wake up the soldiers sleeping in their beds across the fence. You did not disperse the Nova Festival. You did not call the prime minister. And you are telling us to our face that you gave the warning? This is preposterous. And this is why I'm saying it's a Hunter Biden laptop moment. And I'll elaborate in a minute, because the lies are so obvious and the press is just towing the line. The press is just towing the line. It's unbelievable. So one thing he said, I did provide a warning. The second thing he said, the prime minister has been trying to use me in order to evade the testimony that he's giving in his own trial. So
wait, you got to unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, that's worth unpacking.
Everything is interlaced with everything else.
Yeah. So
what's the contention here? How is he?
So the prime minister asked him to find a different location for the proceedings of the court that would be safer. And Ronen Bar framed that as an attempt by the prime minister to procrastinate and not show up to his court appearances. And now it's clear that the prime minister asked this after an Iranian drone hit the bedroom window of his private residence in Caesarea. And then he came to the Shin Bet guy and he said, look, if my court appearances in Jerusalem are in the same place always, and it's unprotected, and the times are publicized, then it's dangerous, and it is your responsibility to protect me.
Yeah.
And indeed, the lie being so obvious again, they found a place, and it's a safer place. It's in a basement in Tel Aviv court, and Netanyahu's testimony goes on uninterrupted. So that's another silly lie. It's a silly lie. And what he did in the affidavit is not mention that the conversation was after the drone hit the bedroom. So he tried to conceal the context. And now the last and no less stupid lie was that the prime minister asked him, there's a fourth now, I remember, it's not that important, but the prime minister tried to use him to target political enemies because he said he must investigate the Kaplan activists who have been threatening the prime minister's life. It's your job to follow people who are saying or calling for killing the prime minister. But Ronen Bar is part and there's a gag order on his actual relations with people at the head of the Kaplan and demonstrate. But these are really, really intimate connections that he has with these Kaplan people. And
I read about some of them in the press or on the social media. I can't remember. His wife is what?
You can't say that, Mike. You can't say that in my presence. You can say you can put that on your Twitter feed.
Okay.
But I follow the gag orders.
But anyway, okay. Oh, so it is a serious gag order.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're talking about very, very close personal relations.
Yeah, and these are very serious threats, people calling for the murder of the prime minister. And this is exactly your job when you are Shabak, to follow these people. Haven't we learned anything from the Rabin assassination? That when people talk like that, it can be dangerous. So Ronen Bar said in his affidavit, we only follow clandestine organizations, and this was public protest. And then it turned out that when it comes to the right, they are penetrating public protests. And in fact, Im Tirtzu, I'm connected to Im Tirtzu. It's a right-wing student organization, just discovered there are Shabak plants inside Im Tirtzu. So Im Tirtzu is the danger. As settlers are put in rat-infested cells without any evidence, but when it comes to the Kaplan, they're just shrugging. And the last thing,
I know the guy who founded Im Tirtzu. But what exactly does Im Tirtzu do? Im Tirtzu, of course, is Theodore Herzl's famous saying: "If you dream it, it's not or if you want it, it's not a dream."
Yeah, if you will it, it's not a dream. So
Im Tirtzu enzo agada. If you will it, this is not a fantasy or a fable.
Exactly. So and Erez Tadmor.
Yes.
I think you follow him on Twitter. Erez is a really smart guy and also a friend. But Im Tirtzu, they protest, they publish memes, they collect signatures for petitions, they do legal stuff. And Ronen Bar thinks it's paramount to follow them. So I can tell you a funny story because we advertised for my Hebrew language podcast. I need someone to do some job at the headquarters. So we advertised at Im Tirtzu, and one of the people who approached us said, Shabak tried to recruit me. So I'm.
How do you know? How do you know that's not a cover story? He may be a Shabak guy. Maybe you're.
Maybe or maybe not. We didn't take her. But anyway, I was on the verge of having a Shabak plant in my Gatekeeper podcast, which of course, Shabak, Ronen Bar, you're welcome to it. Feel free. And the last thing that Ronen Bar said was that Netanyahu ordered him that in a case of a constitutional crisis, he must not obey the court, but rather the cabinet. So on the face of it, this is a pile of lies.
Do you think that Netanyahu made that statement to him?
Netanyahu, in his affidavit, he doesn't deny that he did, but I think he meant to deny that he did, because what he does is disprove that the incidents where Ronen Bar says he said that. And I'll say a word about this in a moment, because Netanyahu retaliated with an affidavit that I think Ronen Bar did not expect, because all of Ronen Bar's whatever, I don't know how to call them, arguments are based or referenced in memoranda written by Shabak, while Netanyahu is the only person in the Israeli government who is authorized to declassify protocols.
This is exactly the James Comey Donald Trump.
Exactly. I'm saying
it's
this
right out of the playbook. I mean, Comey wrote these memoranda, and he also distributed them, and both the memoranda were one-sided, and distributing them was illegal.
Yeah, so check my tablet pieces on this. I've been saying that Ronen Bar is taking a page off the James Comey book, and that this is the Russian collusion hoax. And now we are at the laptop moment, because Netanyahu just made ashes out. Do you say that in English? Afar va'efer, made dust and ashes, we said, of Ronen Bar's affidavit. He just
say made mincemeat.
Made mincemeat. I like that. I'll adopt that. And osek tzitzot, that's the Hebrew, right? It's like ground beef.
Yeah.
So also we say kaved katzutz. How do you say kaved katzutz? Chopped liver.
Chopped liver.
And you do say chopped liver, as I have learned from Eminem.
Yeah, but chopped liver is comes from what do you call it? It comes into English from Yiddish or from Jews.
Yeah.
But you say, what am I, chopped liver? Like, you're not taking me seriously enough. But you don't say you made chopped liver of me like that.
So mincemeat is better because Netanyahu just showed in the protocols that almost nothing of Ronen Bar was saying was true. And when you come to the question of did he tell him to obey the government? First of all, if he did well, because the law says,
because that's the law.
you should obey the cabinet. And it's not for the head of Shabak to decide if there is or isn't a constitutional crisis. Yeah. And what Ronen Bar did during the struggle over the reform, which of course he was with the Kaplan crowd, in his heart is a concealed threat. He refused to say that he will obey the government, thus destabilizing everything. So the government legislated something, the court illegally struck it down, and now Ronen Bar refuses to say that he will side with the government. The government is not threatening to arrest the judges, but Ronen Bar is sort of hinting or not denying that he will step into the prime minister's office, as the press was calling, and arrest him. He didn't say that, but he was not denying that. So this is one contentious issue. But very simple things. When Ronen Bar said, this is not in the protocols, because after that meeting was over, the prime minister asked to stay with me and in four eyes, we call it, in person, alone, to discuss something, and then he said it. So it's not in the protocol. But then the protocol says that at the end of the meeting that Ronen Bar mentions, Ronen Bar asked the prime minister to see him alone. It's all a bunch of lies. And now look at the press. And this is why I'm saying it's a Hunter Biden laptop moment. Because when the Hunter Biden laptop scandal erupted, we were all saying, that's all horseshit. Because what Russian plant? There is... I'm assuming that our listeners do know what it is, because you told me once that on the left, nobody knows what it is. But
amazingly, they don't know.
Arranged all these 50 security intelligence veterans to say that the laptop story bears all the earmarks of a Russian disinformation operation.
All the hallmarks of a Russian disinformation campaign, although we haven't seen it.
Yeah. And I thought, nobody's going to buy that. Come on. These are emails. You can check the other side.
But you know what? I didn't realize at the time, because they took that out in the New York Times, I think, the whole 53 intelligence professionals, some of whom I know personally and respected before that. I didn't realize what the purpose of that was. Because it was more important than convincing public opinion that it was a Russian plant, was providing justification for the censorship. Because we now know, thanks to Elon Musk opening up all the files of Twitter to journalists, we now know that the FBI was telling Facebook and Google and Twitter to censor these sites. So it was a Marit Ein that was used for administrative actions that had a great impact, because as I say, if you talk to liberals, even very well informed liberals, but people who get their information from the New York Times, they didn't even know what Hunter Biden's laptop was. And because all of this was happening during the 2020 election, so it was election rigging, is what it was.
If I remember correctly, the way it was reported in the New York Times was a headline that says, Trump has been warned that information from Giuliani may be a Russian plant. That's how they reported the Hunter Biden thing. And a year and a half later, they admitted that it was not.
Yeah. So they have no problem. They have no problem admitting a mistake because that gives them the feeling, the impression that they're a serious, reputable organization, changing their opinion according to the evidence and so on. But the whole goal was to put the thing
to get Biden through the election.
The election, and then after that, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So they achieved what they wanted, but here it's the same. So
I have something to. Are you done on the Ronen Bar?
No. I'll wrap it up with this: that the prime minister just proved that Ronen Bar was lying. He just proved it with the protocols he declassified. And how was that reported in the press, Mike?
How?
The prime minister is calling the head of Shin Bet a liar. Wild incitement against public servant Ronen Bar and all the rest of it. And and here's my last remark. The media lies. Liars in the media, they live in their own echo chamber, and they get intoxicated on the efficient way that it works. But at one point, it becomes one lie too far. And I thought that would be the Hunter Biden lie. But it took 3.5 more years in which we were told that Joe Biden is sharp as a tack on one-on-one. Yeah. And then came the debate, and the whole edifice just crashed down. And when they tried to push Kamala Harris with joy, they were risible. So I think we're approaching that point in Israel because it has become ridiculous, and these people are now defending democracy by supporting the subordination of the cabinet to the secret police. This is like, you. Who are you supporting? This is Lavrenti Beria. What are you doing? And in the name of human rights, it's just too crazy, and it's going to collapse.
I suspect that a large percentage of our viewers don't know who Beria was.
This was Stalin's chief of police, famous of secret police, NKVD, the parent of the KGB.
NKVD, yeah.
And he was famous for saying, "Show me the man, and I'll find you the crime." So that's what Ronen Bar now is.
If I'm not mistaken, he was Jewish.
I don't think he was Jewish, but I just discovered.
I think he was. But it's anti-Semitic of me to ask the question.
We will get to you anti-Semites soon in another section of this show, and I'm going to Google this. I just discovered that one of the worst Stalinists, another one of the worst Stalinists, was Jewish. This is Matyas Rakosi, from Hungary, and apparently he was born Rosenfeld. Yeah, he was a diehard Stalinist in Hungary. Okay. Foreign policy.
I want to make a couple of real quick. I'm not going to let you make a transition here. I want to make a couple of connections between everything that you just said.
Silly me.
And some other things. Yes, silly you. While you were talking, I remembered that I saw something this week, and I wanted to flag it. I'll bring it in next week, and we'll look at it a little more closely. But Elon Goldenberg, who was in the White House in the Biden administration, working on the Israel file, he gave an interview which basically affirms everything that we said in this podcast during the war about how the White House saw the Israeli right as the force that needed to be stopped. So in other words, what I'm talking about here, Gadi, is the intersection between the mindset of elements of the Israeli security establishment, epitomized in your telling right now by Ronen Bar, who didn't want to actually raise an alert when he had evidence of an impending attack because out of fear of how the right wing in Israel was going to respond. There's an analogous mindset on the in the American administration, in the Biden administration, that wanted to make sure after the attack happened that the Israeli right didn't capitalize on it, and that's why we got all this sanctions machine and everything else. And Goldenberg, a lot of what he says just completely affirms everything that we said during the
Yeah,
war.
that they were trying to undermine the Netanyahu government and replace it. They were conducting a color revolution here.
The second thing is that that there's another parallel here. It's not just a parallel, but a point at which the mindsets in Washington and in the Israeli security establishment, the political mindsets, intersect, and that has to do with Iran. There was the 2007 NIE, the National Intelligence Estimate, in which the intelligence community here in the United States found that Iran was not pursuing a nuclear weapon, and that it had put a freeze on its nuclear weapon program. This is a very controversial finding. It continues to have an effect today because there's still in the IC a kind of assessment that Iran is not going for a nuclear weapon. We don't need to go into all the details of this, but the 2007 NIE is a reaction to the NIE. It's an overreaction, a political overreaction to the NIE in 2002 or 2003, I think 2002, which found that Saddam Hussein was pursuing weapons of mass destruction, and the intelligence community felt that they had inadvertently stoked the right-wing elements, right-wing arguments in favor of war in Iraq, and so in order to put a obstacle in the way of right-wing elements advocating for some kind of strike on Iran, they came out with a much with an intelligence finding that would make it very difficult for the president to argue that there was an impending threat from the Iranians. Now, this of course is also part of this whole intelligence assessment. This is part of the disagreements between the Israelis and the Americans. What are the Iranian intentions? How far along are they? Israel historically has always been inclined to see a push toward a bomb, where the Americans have been inclined not to see it. So there's always this tension there, and that again goes directly to this whole question of we have to use the intelligence, or we formulate the intelligence in such a way that it will put a block on right-wing arguments.
Mm-hmm. And do you think the Trump administration now is going with that line of thought?
Elements of it are. Tulsi Gabbard is the head of she's the head of
Director of National Intelligence.
The Director of National Intelligence. And I suspect that when she's sitting in the meetings with Donald Trump, she says, well, Mr. President, there's no evidence that they're weaponizing, blah, 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 blah. I suspect, I don't know, we don't know what's being said in those things, but it wouldn't surprise me at all. In fact, I would bet a lot of money that that's what's happening.
And where do you think Trump stands on that?
Trump is, I think Trump, the Trump that we see before the television cameras is the same Trump that we're going to see in cabinet meetings. He's going to zig and he's going to zag, depending upon what he wants to do at any given moment, and he's not going to let anyone know what his real calculations are.
Are you optimistic?
Not overly, no. Because I'm in favor of a tougher Iran policy. I don't like the tack right now on the
negotiation.
On the negotiations. We don't need to kowtow to the Iranians. We're kowtowing to the Iranians, and we don't need to.
When I interviewed Prime Minister Netanyahu, I asked him at the end of the interview if he would agree to a deal if the deal ensures the total dismantling of all centrifuges. And he paused, and then he said,
"Oh, what?
Of all centrifuges, yeah, okay." And it's hard. It's hard
I
to.
got in our viewer comment. People make fun of me for correct. They
No,
say
correct
that
me.
no. I
Correct me,
only
because we're here in an intimate
they don't
forum.
believe me when they don't believe me when I say that I am actually deeply impressed by your command of language, both English and Hebrew. And it always amuses me when you make these little mistakes because everything else is so fluid. But they think I'm being very pedantic and nasty. And anyway, what can I say?
No, I favor
I
that.
correct you with love and affection,
Thank you, Mike.
deep admiration.
I'm happy you do this intimate forum where it's just the two of us.
Yes.
Because then one day I might go on some real program, and then I'll pronounce it right. What is happening, Mike, is that we are becoming the real programs, and they are becoming obsolete. I just mentioned my interview with the Prime Minister, and now I got from Channel 12, Raviv Drucker, probably the most rabid anti-Netanyahu.
So just so everybody knows, Channel 12, NBC, CBS, ABC, like that.
Yeah, no,
absolutely the number one channel. Yeah,
I made
mainstream channel.
I made a mistake. It's 13. Raviv Drucker is on 13. He's not. He's supposedly a journalist, but he's really an anti-Netanyahu activist. And I had a moment of satisfaction when they called me and asked for the right to take this a few parts from the interview. Now I'm sure what they're going to do with it is portray me as a supplicant and portray Netanyahu as a liar and whatever they want to do.
No, they won't. They'll cut you out and they'll say,
I told them you can have these pieces after I counted the seconds, provided you leave my logo at the corner of the screen and you announce either on a stripe or orally, Ugadi Taub Shomer Saf, the name of my podcast, Gatekeeper. And whatever they want to say, they can say, because they are drowning in the ratings. They are drowning and we are rising. And so, but this is just an introduction to say that when I asked the Prime Minister about would he agree to, would he be happy with a total dismantle of the centrifuges? You have to add an E too, because it's not centrifuges, it's centrifuges now. Yeah. Okay, is that correct? And he paused, and he said, "Do you trust the Iranians?" And that was it. That was the answer. So this is probably what he's also saying to.
Yeah, he called publicly for a Libya-style deal.
What?
He called publicly for a Libya-style deal. Where we, in the Bush administration, we took Gaddafi off the terror list after he handed over all of his nuclear program.
And what would you say about such a deal, Mike?
I think also I'm with the Prime Minister 100%. Why are we even entertaining the idea that we can stop this program through negotiation? We cannot.
All right. So I don't want to.
I mean, it can be negotiation.
Another segment.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Do it. I'll let you.
Why don't you do it? I've become a little shy about changing segments. So what's our next segment, Mike?
Our next segment, we're going to quickly talk about the Druze in Syria. That's very interesting.
Yeah. So what is going on?
Actually, now that we're in the segment, I'm not 100% sure because there were attacks on there's a neighborhood just south of Damascus where there are Druze, and there have been attacks on Druze there. It's not clear to me who's carrying out the attacks, and I want to make that clear to everyone. It may turn out to be that it is in fact the forces of Shara, the interim head of the Syrian government. He is, of course, a graduate of Al Qaeda, and therefore on the terror list, and therefore not trusted by anyone. But he's also been making very, very conciliatory moves toward Israel, and attempting to demonstrate to the world that he is not going to try to export his revolution. The critics are saying export an Islamist revolution. The critics are saying, he can say whatever he wants, but he's surrounded by all of these foreign fighters who are professional jihadis, global jihadis, and he is a prisoner of them to a certain extent, and therefore we have to watch him very, very, very closely. The reason I say we need to be careful about this is that I've looked into it somewhat. I didn't have time to really go deeply into it like I would have liked to. But this is the kind of issue where the Iranians excel at creating friction between different elements that works to their advantage. Remember, I talked about it here. I think one of the odd things about this moment is that the Israeli some of the Israeli claims against the Shara government and the pro-Israeli claims against the Shara government coincide perfectly with the propaganda of the Iranians. Remember when there were Alawites being slaughtered on the coast, this was presented as simply as Islamists slaughtering minorities. There were lies put out that there were large numbers of Christians being slaughtered. There were not. This wasn't happening.
And you informed us that the Alawites were actually the vehicle for Iran in order to
Iran and
insert themselves into Syrian politics.
Yes, yes. So all I'm saying here, I don't actually know exactly what's going on. This could be Shara carrying out attacks against the Druze. This could be elements around Shara that he doesn't have perfect control of. That also exists. Who carried out attacks against the Druze? This could be. This could also be. The whole thing started apparently with a video of supposedly of a Druze guy insulting the Prophet Muhammad. Right. This is exactly like, there are these guys that show up in Europe and they burn Qurans. And then incite tension between communities. This is exactly the kind of thing that Russian and Iranian provocateurs excel at. We have to keep awareness in our mind that this is something that could be going on. I'm not saying it is. I don't know. But keep an open mind and look closely at it. There's a lot of good stuff going on between Turkey and Israel, very quietly. There are
good stuff. You know that people have been approaching me in your absence and
saying, "What's wrong with Mike in Turkey? Why is it?"
That's the constant background noise. But saying,
yeah,
is Mike changing his mind about Turkey, given recent events?
No, I'm not changing my mind about Turkey. Have I changed? I've changed my position somewhat. The statement, for me, a real turning point was a couple of things were turning points for me with regard to my assessment of the Turks. One was President Erdogan's prayer for the destruction of Israel. Another was at first, the reluctance of the Turks to even open up a dialogue with the Israelis quietly. But that now exists, Gadi. There are now deconfliction mechanisms opened up between the Turks and the Israelis. And the Turks seem to have backed off what I take to have been, I only know it from the Israelis. I don't know it from the Turks. The Israelis told me that the Turks were planning to turn Syria into one big Turkish military base.
Yeah.
So that I know, and I took it the way it was told to me by the Israelis, that they had very good intelligence about this. It wasn't just a fear.
Mm-hmm.
So I took that on board. That would be that's a bad thing, I think, if the Turks were to do that. I don't think that they're doing it with the intention of carrying out jihad against Israel, but I understand why Israel can't. Capabilities are intentions, and they can't acquiesce in that. But things have shifted back a little bit now. There are these deconfliction. There are two deconfliction channels going on directly between the Turks and the Israelis. One of them is in Baku, that has been publicized. There's another one going on under American military auspices. I won't say where it is, but it's happening. I think this is a very, very good thing. This is what needs to happen. I think there are also channels between the Shara government and the Israelis. I don't know. I haven't been on top of it. There was some kind of breakdown this week because Israel carried out this attack outside of Damascus to send a message to the Shara government. I don't know. That's a breakdown of some sort of these deconfliction mechanisms, but they do exist. I don't. Again, I haven't. I've been busy with other things, so I haven't followed all the news reporting. I don't know if any of this deconfliction stuff has been reported, but it's important. It's very important, and it's good news. I do believe there are several elements to my argument about Turkey, which I think I don't ever effectively. I often don't effectively convey. One is that what people are presenting as the better alternative, which is that the U.S. should turn hard against Turkey, are not thinking it through. What happens the next day? Do they think that Turkey becomes less hostile to Israel when that happens? Is that what they think? Do they think that Turkey becomes less influential in Syria when that happens? The question is, what is the best way to manage relations with the Turks? And denouncing them as jihadis and calling for the United States to turn against them is going to be very, very ineffective. First of all, Donald Trump is not going to listen. I don't think, because the only test of a policy is the probability of its success. And the policy that is being advocated has a probability of success of 0. It has a near 0 probability of being implemented, and it has if it is implemented, they don't think about the day after. So this, I'm not making. I do actually. It's not true. I was about to say I'm not calling for everyone to like the Turks, but the fact is I do like the Turks more than most people do. I believe that the Turkish national security establishment is primarily concerned with stabilizing Turkey's border with Syria. It has pragmatic goals. There are elements in the Turkish system as a whole that are very hostile to Israel, but I don't believe that they will. I believe if the United States plays its cards correctly, those elements will not be in the driver's seat. And that's what we're trying to, that's how we need to think about it. We are isolating certain elements or putting them in a position where they're not in the driver's seat. And I believe it is in the United States has the capability to do that. Israel does not.
It always boils down to the question, is this regime acting on realpolitik, or is it ideologically jihadist?
Yes.
Whenever this argument erupts, this is the bone of contention between you and other interlocutors. Let me mention Dan Shiftan. We had I think it was our third most popular episode was the argument between you and Dan Shiftan on Turkey, and you can look it up on our channel.
Yes, I'm reluctant to direct people to that debate because the comments there said that Dan Shiftan made mincemeat of me. So I don't like it that is
So ignore that episode. So now to the dumb mistake, and before we moved, we actually have a lot of content on the dumb mistake and a serious discussion of Tucker Carlson, who has become the new pope of anti-Semitism. While denying it, but before we do my dumb mistake, I wanted to screen that, but then the quality is not good enough. This is a guy who is giving a speech at the alternative memorial ceremony where the victims, where the bereaved Palestinians and Israelis are mourning together. This is, a lot of people have joked about this. I mean, bitter jokes that why don't we have a memorial day for the Nazis who lost their kin along with the Jewish victims of the Holocaust. So this guy is like the ultimate perversion. He's a survivor from Be'eri that I wanted to screen and I won't. a survivor from Be'eri, and he stayed in the shelter for 22 hours, and his grandmother was slaughtered by the terrorists, and he got a bullet in his hip. And when he got out and waited for the rescue force, he looked at 7 terrorists who were blindfolded and one that was dead, and the overwhelming feeling he had for them is compassion. He said, these people are, they are so off kilter with the general public opinion here. These ceremonies have been going on for a while, but after October 7, it has become ridiculous. I told you that I quipped on Twitter. They like to say Jews and Arabs refuse to be enemies, and I got a lot of fire for saying Jews and baby killers refuse to be enemies. These are these people. I said the burners of babies, but this is this is moral
the terrorist attacks on October 7th were really just a cry for help.
Yeah, exactly. You know who took that joke to the ultimate? It was The Onion in the days where they were funny, and they have, it's actually here. Where is it? They have an album called Our Dumb Century, about the 20th century, supposedly in front pages of The Onion. Yeah. And one page says, it's in 39, I think, or maybe it's 45. It says, Hitler's destruction of the world, a desperate cry for help. So yeah, exactly. So your dumb mistake, Mike, and here we will show a video. What do you want to introduce?
Yeah, I want to. Yeah, Tucker Carlson appeared on Megyn Kelly, and when I saw this clip of him talking about how upset he is at being called an anti-Semite, I actually thought it was AI generated. I thought it was a deep fake. Tucker Carlson denies being an anti-Semite, and his entire statement is classic anti-Semitism. But I mean, he hits every major theme of anti-Semitism in his denial. It's beautiful. I mean, it really it should be taught in schools. It's a work of art. I don't know how else to describe it. But let's play at least a little bit of a clip of it and then talk about it.
So here it is.
I have been attacked in ways that are so crazy that and it's totally coordinated from Israel. So finally, the other day, I called someone I know in the Israeli government. There are some great people in the Israeli government. I called one of them and I said, stop this. I am not your enemy. You don't think you have enough enemies? Yeah. What? You have real enemies. I've gone out of my way. And by the way, it's our weapons being used.
No, I know you have.
In Gaza.
So here we are. So I don't know, but look, Gadi, his laughs, Tucker Carlson's laughs are so out of sync with the context and the content. I'm afraid that I'll be accused of the same because this thing is vile. This is vile anti-Semitism. Let me make it clear. I think it's vile anti-Semitism, but it is such a perfect example of anti-Semitism that I find it amusing on some level, even though I think it's a very serious issue and we have to call it out for what it is. But he's such a jackass that I can't help but laugh.
Yeah, he's calling the Israeli government
calling the Israeli government to say, call off those Americans who are calling me an anti-Semite, because we know it's all orchestrated by a grand Jewish conspiracy. So let's run through here, Gadi. So we've only shown.
So I called the elders of Zion and I said, stop that.
Stop. Call off your attack dogs. But everyone has to go on my Twitter feed, or maybe you'll retweet it as well, your Twitter feed, and watch the whole clip. Because that little bit about him calling the Israeli government is only the tip of the iceberg. He hits in this 4 minutes. He hits every major anti-Semitic trope. He uses it while claiming he's not anti-Semitic. Even, of course, what's his claim? He's not anti-Semitic. Some of my best friends are Jewish. Right. then, then, then there's the grand conspiracy orchestrated by the Israeli government, who's telling everyone to go out and call him an anti-Semite. Wars, the Jews cause all the wars. Because why is he doing that? And he's trying not to have a fight with the Jews, Gadi. He's trying not to, because he's very restrained. But they are causing all the wars. And remember he had on before, he had that guy martyr made
Daryl Cooper. Yeah.
Daryl Cooper,
Yeah.
who
So
told us
he's
that who has trouble figuring out who the bad guy was in World War II, right? The bad guy, in his mind, the bad guy is Churchill, because Churchill roped us into an unnecessary war. And why did Churchill do it? Because he had a lot of Jewish financiers behind him. So, and then Tucker Carlson had Jeffrey Sachs, this toupee wearing. He's got a beautiful toupee, Jeffrey Sachs. And I said, let me do a Tucker Carlson. You know, I'm not trying to be catty. I'm not trying to be petty, and I'm certainly not trying to criticize him for his personal appearance. I just think it's a beautiful toupee. It's a very beautiful toupee. But Sachs explains on Tucker Carlson's show that Netanyahu and the Israelis have pulled us into 6 wars in the Middle East, and Netanyahu is pushing for a 7th. And that's, of course, what Tucker Carlson is saying. The Jews are trying to drag us into another war. And he's just a simple American who doesn't want his government dragged in by a foreign government into a needless war. He brings in the obliquely now, but it's also their Gaza genocide. If you're going to go medieval, he says, if you're going to go medieval on a people over there, I don't care if you go medieval on them, but not with my weapons, which my taxes are paying for, and so on and so on and so forth. What else does he? Every possible anti-Semitic.
How far did this penetrate the administration and the right in America in general?
I don't know. I don't know. Here's my working assumption. But my working assumption prior to this election was that anti-Semitism was really only on the left, and on the right it was a marginal phenomenon. But it really was, the heart and soul of it today was on the progressive left. I got that wrong. I have to look at you see these jackasses like Tucker Carlson, and you see that really it's back. It is the thing that never goes away. But my working assumption now, though, still is it is more an online phenomenon than it is something that's really deeply penetrated into society. I think I know America, and a Gentile America in all of its dimensions better than Tucker Carlson. I don't think and I think America is philo-Semitic overall and pro-Israel. And I think the polling shows that. But these guys have become a real force on social media.
Megyn Kelly didn't call him out.
Oh no! Unfortunately, that it's a spot on her record that she's sitting there affirming him, and when he says, I've been trying to avoid a fight with these horrible, nasty elders who run the world, and she said, yes, I know you have. Everybody's kowtowing to the son of a bitch because he has proximity to power, right? But we had to call him out. He's a jackass, and we had to call on Donald Trump to distance himself from him, because this is really, really vile. It's really vile.
Yeah, let's make a point of following this in a future episode. Let's also make
we have to, because my minder in the Israeli government called me up and told me that I must make an issue of Tucker Carlson and continue it. Right?
Your handler.
My handler.
Your handler.
My handler. My dark overlord. Dark overlord in the
in the Elders of Zion.
Yeah.
So we will be following this up on future episodes, and we will have future episodes. This is double good news.
They don't, actually though.
He tied his tie.
Yeah, I want to make it clear, right? Because because maybe some people, when I thought that I was being serious when I said my dark overlord in the Israeli government told me to attack Tucker Carlson. I want to make it clear that that's not true, because I only take orders from Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Ilham Aliyev. Okay? Those are
Mike,
sometimes I let the Qataris bribe me, but when
Mike,
otherwise,
Mike,
yeah.
Mike, we've read enough Cold War literature to know that you're a triple agent.
Quadruple.
You're a quadruple agent. You
Yeah.
cheat them all.
Israel, Qatar, Turkey, and Azerbaijan.
So you are the real puppet master behind all this. So do you want to say anything about the listeners' comments, or is that already obsolete? Because the last time they listened to us, we were younger.
And that was a whole nother era. So
I was in my 50s.
My wife looked at me recently. We had a photograph. I turned 63, and there was a photograph from my birthday party, to which I didn't invite you because I no longer had relations with you, and she commented that I used to be salt and pepper. Now it's completely white, and it happened relatively quickly.
Now you're distinguished, finally,
and then I soon will be extinguished.
But not before.
That's the next distinguished and then extinguished. That's the route it goes.
So we will see you next time. Hopefully next week. We still have trouble figuring out the new dates under new schedules, but I think Thursday or Friday is probably our best bet, and I may be posting that tomorrow because there's a lot of editing and splicing in to do. And I have a new computer, and this makes everything more complicated, as you may have guessed. So thank you, Mike.
Congratulations on your purchase.
Yeah, you don't know what a headache it is when you have to take all your video editing from one machine to another. I won't explain.
I wanted to. Okay, now hold on. I'm not going to let you in because years ago I was really thrilled about Al Qaeda websites when they first came out, because these. Prior to, I live in the era where you and I come from, the era when there used to be mimeograph machines, and groups like Al Qaeda in the Middle East, their literature was not published. You couldn't buy it in a bookstore. You couldn't find it anywhere, and they were just little mimeograph copies. So if you wanted to know how does these, you knew these people were out there, but if you wanted to understand how they think, it was hard to understand their mindset. And so when it was put on the web, all of a sudden you could just a couple of clicks and you could find out what they're saying about things. And I found it fascinating. I was following it closely, and I was downloading all this stuff. And then I spilled some milk on my computer. And I was a junior professor at Princeton at the time.
That happened to Hunter Biden too.
Same thing. So I took it to the Princeton, whatever the geek, the guy who the computer people, and he saved it. He saved my hard drive, and I was there talking to the geek, and I said I was so overjoyed because I thought that I had lost all of my Al Qaeda material, and I said to him, "Oh," I said, "I could kiss you. I'm so excited." I said, "I had all of these." I'd saved all of these documents about Al Qaeda propaganda I was very interested in, and I thought I had lost it all. I've been doing this for months. And he said, "I'm not interested in the character of the data, sir." It's ones and zeros. He deals in ones and zeros, and that's all. Doesn't care about anything else.
All right.
It pops into my head whenever I meet people like that. I think, I'm not interested in the character of the data, sir.
That sounds like a military answer too. That's a compartmentalization.
I got one more for you.
Oh, go ahead.
I was down in.
I think I could end the show.
Okay. This is the minute you said it reminded me of another one. I was down in North Carolina at Fort Bragg and meeting with special operations guys, and the special operators are special, and they're a different breed because they're absolutely trained killers, but they kind of have a hippie mentality. Jesse Ventura, right? Jesse Ventura is a great example that loves. They're kind of free spirits and killers, right? And so anyway, I had dinner with these guys, and then there was a jackpot in the lottery that was $1 billion or something, and I wanted to buy a lottery ticket, and as we're walking out, it was Friday night, and I wanted to make sure, and I was going to travel the next day, and they had the drawing is on Saturday night. I wanted to make sure to get my ticket, and I walked out, and I'm with this guy. He's wearing flip-flops. He's got long hair, and he's a killer. And I said, "Oh, I forgot to buy a lottery ticket. Where can I buy one around here?" And he said, I don't know. And I said, "What? You don't play the lottery?" And he said, "That's not the way I roll, sir. That's not the way I roll."
Yeah, it does sound like something out of the electric Kool-Aid acid test.
Yes, but from a guy who can
Special
kill
ops.
you with his little finger.
All right, that is all from us for today, and we will see you next week. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
We were as sane as possible under the
circumstances. Is that still on the? Are we still
Nobody knows.
recording?
Nobody knows. Oh, we are recording. Yeah.
Okay. As
All right.
sane as possible under circumstances.